Mark's mind raced. Making it hard for him? What did he mean? Before he could react, the man lunged forward, faster than Mark could anticipate. A surge of adrenaline shot through him, and he instinctively dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the stranger's grasp. But the man was quick, far too quick. He was on Mark in an instant, slamming him against the wall of the alley. Mark gasped, the air knocked out of him, his head spinning from the impact. He struggled, but the man's grip was like iron. "You should have stayed away," the man muttered darkly, leaning in closer. Mark's heart pounded in his ears, and for a moment he was sure this would be it. Then, with all the strength he had left, Mark shoved the man off, stumbling back. He couldn't outrun him, but he could fight back. Jason Miller had always been a regular guy with a 9-to-5 job in Austin, Texas. But after months of unhealthy habits and endless days stuck behind a desk, he decided it was time for a change. That's how he ended up at this 24-hour gym, late one evening, determined to get in shape. The place was eerily quiet, a sharp contrast to the bustling city outside. He wasn't bothered by the silence. In fact, it was comforting. Jason always wore wireless headphones during his workouts, the kind that cut out the clutter of the world and let him focus. He had his routine, his playlist, and the rhythmic sound of weights clinking as his sole companions. But there was something about tonight that felt different. Maybe it was the strange stillness in the air, or the way the gym seemed to stretch endlessly into the shadows. As he settled onto a leg machine, the flickering fluorescent lights above added a strange hum to the atmosphere. Jason felt his stomach tighten, an instinctive unease creeping up on him. He shoved it aside. It's just the late hour, he thought. He continued his set, pushing through the reps, the heavy weights burning through his muscles. Then, something happened. The music in his headphones crackled and popped, just like it had in the past when he walked too far from his phone. The signal cut out, and the familiar voice of his playlist vanished into static. Jason paused mid-set, expecting to feel the familiar weight of his phone on the machine in front of him, but it wasn't there. His heart skipped a beat. Panic bubbled up inside him as he looked around. The gym was nearly empty, save for a couple of men scattered around. One was a sweaty, bulky guy in the corner, struggling through his own workout, while the other sat on a machine, staring down at his phone. The place felt too quiet now, too empty. Something wasn't right. Jason's mind raced as he stood up and glanced around frantically. No sign of his phone. Had someone taken it? Jason's pulse quickened as he walked through the gym, his eyes scanning every corner, every machine. The place was still, almost too still. His phone should have been sitting right there on the leg press, but it was gone. He looked at the two men in the gym. One was still huffing and puffing on a treadmill, oblivious to everything around him. The other, a man in a hoodie and beanie, sat on a machine, his face glued to his phone. Jason's instincts told him to approach the man in the hoodie, despite how uncomfortable the thought made him. But there was no way around it. He needed answers. "Hey, did you see anyone near my machine?" Jason asked, his voice a little sharper than he intended. The man looked up at him, his eyes betraying an annoyance that made Jason's stomach tighten. He pulled one earbud out slowly, as if annoyed by the interruption, and glanced at Jason. After a long, drawn-out pause, the man muttered, "Number." Jason forced a smile, trying not to let the anger boil over. "Are you sure? You didn't see anyone walking by?" The man shook his head, his face a mask of indifference. Jason wanted to snap at him, but he bit back his frustration and walked away. His next stop was the front desk. The gym's worker, a young woman, nodded when he asked her to check the security footage. She clicked through the video, and after a few moments, her face paled. Jason leaned in, his heart hammering in his chest as he saw it. The man in the hoodie, the same guy, walking straight toward his machine, grabbing his phone, and casually slipping it into his pocket. "That's him," Jason whispered. "That's the guy who took it." Jason's mind raced as he watched the footage. His phone, his private life gone. The man in the hoodie had calmly walked past the front desk, unnoticed, and taken his phone without a second thought. Jason's stomach twisted with dread. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The man hadn't even hesitated. It was as if he knew exactly where to go, exactly what to take. Did you see where he went? Jason asked, his voice trembling. The gym worker, pale and wide-eyed, shook her head. She hadn't noticed anything out of the ordinary when the man left. Jason's heart sank. He had to act fast. Without another word, he bolted out the door, ignoring the cold night air that slapped against his face as he searched the parking lot. He spotted nothing, no sign of the man, no footprints in the snow, just an empty, silent street. He frantically scanned the area, but the man was gone. Jason checked the time. It had only been minutes since he saw the footage. He couldn't have gotten far. Suddenly, he had an unsettling thought. What if he didn't just steal the phone? The dread crept deeper into his gut. What if he had access to everything? Jason rushed back inside, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Did you get his membership info? He asked the employee. She checked the system, but there was nothing, no record of the guy at all. The footage was the only proof he was ever there. That's when the full weight of the situation hit Jason. He'd been robbed. And worse, he had no way of knowing who this man really was. Jason's heart raced as the reality of the situation started to settle in. The man had been in the gym, taken his phone, and vanished without a trace. No membership, no record, just a fleeting shadow who now held access to every part of his life. He couldn't shake the feeling that something much darker was unfolding. Did you report this to the police? Jason asked, his voice tight with urgency. The gym worker hesitated. I will, she replied, still in shock. I'll tell my boss tomorrow. But Jason couldn't wait. He had to get ahead of this. As he left the gym, the chilling thought kept creeping in. What was this guy doing with my phone? Was he looking through my pictures, my texts? The idea made him nauseous, but he couldn't dwell on it. He needed answers. He dialed his best friend, Tom, as soon as he got in the car. Tom picked up, sounding half asleep. Jason? What's up? Listen, I've got bad news, Jason said, his voice shaky. Someone took my phone at the gym, and they've got access to everything. Tom was silent for a moment. Then he gasped. Wait, what do you mean? Like, everything? Dude, that's bad, really bad. Jason explained what happened, and Tom's voice grew frantic. Someone's been texting me from your phone. They're asking if they can stay over at my place. Jason froze. His worst fears were coming true. This stranger wasn't just accessing his phone. He was using it to manipulate his friends, pretending to be him. Jason's hands trembled as he listened to Tom on the other end of the line. What do you mean they've been texting you? Jason asked, his voice shaking. Tom quickly sent over the messages. As Jason read through them, the pit in his stomach deepened. It was clear now whoever had his phone was using it to impersonate him. The messages were casual at first, asking to stay over, then slowly escalating to more personal requests. Can you leave your back door unlocked? I'm coming over late, one message read. Jason's heart skipped a beat. His mind raced. This wasn't just a prank. Someone was planning to break into Tom's house. I'm coming over, the text ended, and that's when it hit Jason. The man who had stolen his phone wasn't just using it to look through his apps or texts. He was making plans that were far more sinister. Jason and Tom decided to head to Tom's house immediately. When they arrived, Tom showed him the footage from his security cameras. Jason's blood ran cold as they watched the video of the man from the gym walking through Tom's back door, acting as though he had all the time in the world. He was grabbing expensive items from around the house, stuffing them into his pockets as if he belonged there. The man moved methodically, walking upstairs and even entering Tom's bedroom. For nearly 10 minutes, the stranger ransacked the house, then slipped back out the door, leaving behind a trail of stolen goods. Jason felt a cold chill run through him. This wasn't just a theft, it was something far more dangerous. He started taking different routes to work, avoiding places he frequented. He'd glance over his shoulder every time someone passed by, convinced that he was being followed. His phone, once a simple tool for communication, now felt like a ticking time bomb. Its data, his life, in the hands of a stranger. Jason even started locking his doors at night with a sense of dread, as if someone would sneak in through the shadows. Then one night, he decided to take a more direct approach. He drove back to the gym, hoping that revisiting it would give him some answers. The empty parking lot greeted him with the same eerie silence as before. Jason felt a chill in his bones as he parked near the front entrance, but he was determined to find out the truth. Inside, the gym was as quiet as a tomb. He approached the front desk and spoke with the worker again, asking for the footage once more. This time, she looked even more nervous. After a few minutes, she turned the screen toward him. But instead of the footage from the night he had lost his phone, the video showed something far worse. Someone had been in the gym again, late at night. It was the same man. And this time, he wasn't just taking phones. Jason's blood ran cold as he watched the video of the man slowly walking past the machines, staring straight at the camera. He wasn't just sneaking around. He was waiting for Jason. Mark Johnson had always been a creature of habit. A 32-year-old consultant in Denver, his days were filled with spreadsheets, meetings, and deadlines. But it was the late-night hours that he cherished the most. When everyone else was fast asleep, he had the gym to himself. It was quiet, eerily so, and that was exactly how he liked it. On this particular night, the gym was nearly empty, just like always. The faint hum of the air conditioning was the only sound that filled the air, and the low, buzzing lights flickered slightly above him. Mark didn't mind. The stillness gave him the solitude he needed to focus on his workout, uninterrupted. He threw on his wireless headphones, cranked up his playlist, and let the music drown out the world. The gym was practically deserted at this hour. He could see his own reflection in the mirror in front of him as he pressed the barbell above his chest, the weight making his muscles strain with effort. His breathing became rhythmic, synchronized with the beat of his music. This was his escape. But tonight, something felt different. Mark couldn't pinpoint what it was, but a strange tension lingered in the air. His skin prickled. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He chalked it up to exhaustion, pushing through his workout despite the growing unease. It wasn't until he finished his set and sat up to catch his breath that he noticed him. A man. In the far corner of the gym, a figure stood watching him intently. Mark's heart skipped a beat. The man wasn't working out. He was just standing there, staring. There was something unsettling about the way he looked at Mark, like he was waiting for something. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that the man had been watching him for longer than he realized. Trying to brush it off, Mark grabbed a dumbbell and moved to another section of the gym, where there were fewer mirrors. Maybe the man was just another late-night gym goer, he told himself. But even as he worked through his next set, the sense of being watched intensified. He looked up and caught the stranger's eyes again. The man hadn't moved an inch, his gaze fixed firmly on Mark. This time, Mark couldn't pretend he didn't feel it. The chill running down his spine wasn't from the cold air, and the discomfort was far beyond a mere coincidence. His stomach tightened as he realized something wasn't right. He tried to ignore the feeling and pressed on with his workout, but the man's stare didn't waver. It was as if the stranger was daring him to do something. Mark quickly finished his set and moved to a different part of the gym. But no matter where he went, no matter what machine he used, that cold, unsettling gaze was always there, following him, unblinking. The gym, which had always been a peaceful sanctuary, now felt like a cage. And the man? He was the coincidence. Maybe he was being paranoid. But the longer he stayed, the more certain he became that tonight something was going to happen. Something he couldn't explain. It became. The gym, usually a peaceful retreat, had turned into a place where every shadow seemed too dark and every corner held secrets. He could still feel the weight of that man's stare, burning into the back of his neck like an invisible hand. Mark's attempts to focus on his workout were futile. His attention kept flickering back to the man, still standing in the corner, his eyes unwavering. Mark tried to dismiss the thought. Maybe he's just waiting for his turn, maybe he's just tired. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. There was something off about the stranger, something that gnawed at him relentlessly. He glanced around the gym. The place was practically empty, except for the two of them, and the other lone gym-goer was too absorbed in his own workout to notice. Mark had a brief moment of comfort in the solitude, but then his eyes were drawn back to the man again. This time, the stranger wasn't just watching, he was moving. Slowly, deliberately, the man took a step toward him, and then another. Mark's breath hitched. The music in his headphones became distant, the rhythm of his workout interrupted by the increasing thud of his heartbeat. Every movement the man made felt deliberate, calculated. Mark shifted nervously, pretending to focus on his sets, but every fiber of his being screamed that he needed to leave. He quickly grabbed his towel, wiping the sweat from his face. But when he looked up, the man had disappeared. His heart skipped a beat. Had he walked away? Was he still here? Mark moved cautiously to the other side of the gym, keeping his gaze scanning the area. The gym was eerily quiet again, but now the silence felt suffocating. Suddenly, Mark heard a faint shuffle of footsteps, too soft to be accidental. He spun around, expecting to see the stranger, but there was no one there, just empty space. The man had vanished again, but this time, Mark knew in his gut that something wasn't right. The presence, that feeling of being hunted, lingered in the air like a shadow that wouldn't leave. Was he just being paranoid? Or was someone really watching him in the dead of night? Mark's mind raced as he tried to shake the feeling of being watched. He could feel it lingering in the pit of his stomach, gnawing at him like a relentless itch he couldn't scratch. He stood still for a moment, scanning the gym, trying to convince himself it was all in his head. The gym was quiet once again, too quiet. He needed to do something to calm himself, so he walked toward the back of the gym, away from the main floor, hoping the isolation would help him regain focus. But as soon as he moved to the far side, the hairs on the back of his neck prickled again. The air felt thicker, colder, and that feeling of being watched hit him once more. He turned to glance over his shoulder, his eyes searching for the stranger, but the gym remained empty, no sign of him. Mark swallowed hard, trying to suppress the unease crawling up his spine. But when he turned his back to the room again, that unmistakable sound hit his ears, the soft shuffle of footsteps behind him, closing in. This time, it wasn't just his imagination. Mark's heart raced. He quickly turned around, his mind screaming for him to act, but the gym was still deserted. There was no one there. He stared at the empty space in disbelief. The man had to be close by. But where? He stood frozen, eyes darting around the dimly lit gym. He couldn't shake the feeling that the stranger was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to make his move. Mark had enough. This was no coincidence. With his heart pounding, he rushed toward the front desk, hoping to find some sense of safety. As he approached the counter, the young woman behind the desk glanced up at him, her face pale and tense. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Mark didn't answer right away. He couldn't. The sense of dread had settled deep inside him, and he couldn't explain why he felt so trapped. He just knew he wasn't alone, and something, or someone, was waiting for him. Mark's mind was in overdrive as he stood at the front desk, his hands shaking. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see the stranger appear behind him at any moment. The gym, once his sanctuary, now felt like a maze of shadows and whispers. The young woman behind the counter looked at him with concern, but Mark didn't know how to explain the growing sense of fear that gripped him. How could he? How could he tell her that he felt hunted by a man who seemed to vanish into thin air whenever Mark turned his back? "Are you sure everything's okay?" the woman asked again, her voice more insistent this time. Mark swallowed hard, trying to steady his breathing. I think someone's been following me," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. He didn't want to sound paranoid, but it was the truth. Every instinct told him that the man was somewhere in the gym, lurking, waiting. He had to know if the stranger was still there. The woman raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Are you sure? Maybe you're just tired. You've been here for a while, right?" Mark nodded quickly. "Yeah, but I know what I saw." He forced a shaky breath, trying to remain calm. "Please, can you check the cameras? Just to be sure?" She hesitated, looking uncertain, but finally nodded. She turned to the computer at the desk and began to click away at the keyboard, bringing up the security footage. Mark stood anxiously, eyes darting around the gym, hoping to see something that would confirm he wasn't imagining this. After a few moments, the woman's face changed, her brow furrowed. "There," she said, her voice tight. She clicked a few buttons, bringing up the footage. Mark leaned in, his pulse pounding in his ears. What he saw on the screen made his stomach drop. The stranger, the man who had been following him, was in the gym, not just watching from the corner anymore. He was moving, stepping closer to Mark's machine, his eyes fixed on him with unnerving intensity. The man wasn't even supposed to be here. "There's something wrong," Mark whispered, his voice hollow. The gym worker glanced at him, pale. "He's not even registered in the system," she said, voice trembling. Mark's breath caught in his throat. He'd been followed by a ghost. The man wasn't just watching him, he had been waiting. Mark's mind raced as he stared at the screen, his eyes fixed on the footage that confirmed his worst fear. The man in the hoodie had been stalking him the entire time. Not only had he been following him, but he hadn't even checked into the gym. There was no record of him being a member. He was a total stranger. The gym worker's voice trembled as she spoke again. "Two don't know what to do. This is really strange." Mark felt the cold grip of panic tightening around his chest. His instinct screamed at him to leave, to get as far away from this place as possible, but he couldn't. He couldn't let the man get away. "I need to find him," Mark muttered under his breath, his eyes never leaving the screen. He's not just going to walk away from this. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, pumping his heart faster, making his hands clammy. He had to act. The gym worker was already dialing the phone, but Mark wasn't waiting around. He pushed past her, ignoring her calls to stop, and ran to the front door. The cold night air hit him like a slap in the face as he burst out into the parking lot, looking desperately for any sign of the man. The lot was empty. His car was parked in the same spot, bathed in the yellow light from the overhead street lamp, but there was no sign of the man. Mark's throat tightened. Where did he go? He checked the surroundings quickly. No one. He ran to the back of the gym, the alleyways dark and filled with shadows, but it was silent. Nothing moved. He cursed under his breath. Had he really disappeared again? Just as Mark was about to turn back, something caught his eye: footprints, fresh in the snow, leading toward the alley behind the building. Mark's breath hitched. His heart raced. The man was close. He followed the trail, his pulse pounding louder than his footsteps, until he reached the edge of the alley. He rounded the corner, eyes scanning the darkness. Then, just as he was about to take another step, he heard it. A low chuckle. It wasn't from behind him. It came from ahead, in the shadows. Mark froze. The man was right there. The sound of the chuckle made Mark's blood run cold. It was soft, almost haunting, echoing off the walls of the narrow alley. Mark's breath caught in his throat as he slowly turned toward the source of the noise. His eyes scanned the darkened space, the shadows playing tricks on him as his heart raced in his chest. There, just beyond the reach of the dim streetlight, was the man. Mark couldn't see his face clearly, but he could feel the coldness in his gaze, like the man knew something Mark didn't. He took a step forward, his mind screaming at him to run, but his legs felt frozen, as if the night itself was holding him in place. "You shouldn't have followed me," the man said, his voice low and almost amused. Mark's fists clenched. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. "What do you want?" The man stepped closer, his silhouette merging with the shadows. "What do I want?" He chuckled again, the sound sending chills down Mark's spine. "I want what's mine, and you've been making it hard for me." Mark's mind raced. Making it hard for him? What did he mean? Before he could react, the man lunged forward, faster than Mark could anticipate. A surge of adrenaline shot through him, and he instinctively dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the stranger's grasp. But the man was quick, far too quick. He was on Mark in an instant, slamming him against the wall of the alley. Mark gasped, the air knocked out of him, his head spinning from the impact. He struggled, but the man's grip was like iron. "You should have stayed away," the man muttered darkly, leaning in closer. Mark's heart pounded in his ears, and for a moment, he was sure this would be it. Then, with all the strength he had left, Mark shoved the man off, stumbling back. He couldn't outrun him, but he could fight back. Well, that was definitely unsettling, wasn't it? Imagine going through all that. How would you have reacted in those situations? Have you ever had an experience where you felt like you were being watched or followed? Or maybe you've got a terrifying gym story of your own. We'd love to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments below if you've experienced something similar. or even if you've got a crazy story you want me to share. Let me know. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss out on more chilling tales. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time with more spine-chilling stories that'll keep you up at night.